Sheet music is a handwritten or printed form of music notation that uses modern musical symbols to indicate the pitches, rhythms and/or chords of a song or instrumental musical piece, like its analogues, printed books or pamphlets in English, Arabic or other languages. The medium of sheet music typically is paper, although the access to musical notation since the 1980s has included the presentation of musical notation on computer screens and the development of scorewriter computer programs that can notate a song or piece electronically, and, in some cases, play back the notated music using a synthesizer or virtual instruments. Use of the term sheet is intended to differentiate written or printed forms of music from sound recordings. Radio or TV broadcasts are recorded live performances, which may capture film or video footage of the performance as well as the audio component. In everyday use, sheet music can refer to the print publication of commercial sheet music in conjunction with the release of a new film, TV show, record album, or other specially popular event which involves music. The first printed sheet music made with a printing press was made in 1473. Sheet music is the basic form in which Western classical music is notated so that it can be learned and performed by solo singers or instrumentalists or musical ensembles. Many forms of traditional and popular Western music are commonly learned by singers and musicians by ear rather than by using sheet music. Score is a common alternative term for sheet music, and there are several types of scores as discussed below. The term score can also refer to theater music, orchestral music or songs written for a play, musical, opera or ballet, or to music or songs written for a television program or film. For the last of these, see film score. Elements: title and credit. Sheet music from the 20th and 21st century typically indicates the title of the song or composition on a title page or cover, or on the top of the first page if there is no title page or cover. If the song or piece is from a movie, Broadway musical, or opera, the title of the main work from which the song piece is taken may be indicated. If the songwriter or composer is known, her or his name is typically indicated along with the title. The sheet music may also indicate the name of the lyric writer, if the lyrics are by a person other than one of the songwriters or composers, and the name of the arranger. If the song or piece has been arranged for the publication, no songwriter or composer name may be indicated. For old folk music, traditional songs in genres such as blues and bluegrass, and very old traditional hymns and spirituals, because for this music, the authors are often unknown. In such cases, the word traditional is often placed where the composer's name would ordinarily go. Black market sheet music, such as illegal jazz fake books, may or may not indicate the songwriter or composer. Musical notation. The type of musical notation varies a great deal by genre or style of music. In most classical music, the melody and accompaniment parts are notated on the lines of a staff using round noteheads. In classical sheet music, the staff always contains a clef, often a bass clef or treble clef, a key signature indicating the key, and the time signature, which typically has two numbers. The top number indicating how many beats are in a bar and the bottom number indicating the unit which the bars are composed of. Most songs and pieces from the classical period and later eras indicate the tempo using an Italian expression such as allegro or grave, and the dynamics using an expression such as forte or pianissimo. The lyrics, if present, are written near the melody notes. However, music from the Baroque music era or earlier eras may have neither a tempo marking nor a dynamic indication. The singers and musicians of that era were expected to know what tempo and loudness to play or sing a given song or piece due to their musical experience and knowledge. In the contemporary classical music era, and in some cases before, composers often used the native language for tempo indications, rather than Italian and/or added metronome markings. These conventions of classical music notation, and in particular the use of English tempo instructions, are also used for sheet music versions of 20th and 21st century popular music songs. Popular music songs often indicate both the tempo and genre: slow blues or up-tempo rock. Pop songs often contain chord names above the staff using letter names, so that an acoustic guitarist or piano player can improvise a chordal accompaniment. In other styles of music, different musical notation methods may be used. In jazz, while most professional performers can read classical-style notation, many jazz tunes are notated using chord charts, which indicate the chord progression of a song and its form. Members of a jazz rhythm section use the chord chart to guide their improvised accompaniment parts. The lead instruments in a jazz group, such as a saxophone player or trumpeter, use the chord changes to guide the solo improvisation. Like popular music songs, jazz tunes often indicate both the tempo and genre: slow blues or fast bop. Professional country music session musicians typically use music notated in the Nashville number system, which indicates the chord progression using numbers. Chord charts using letter names, numbers, or Roman numerals are also widely used for notating music by blues, R&B, rock music and heavy metal musicians. Some chord charts do not provide any rhythmic information, but others use slashes to indicate beats of a bar and rhythm notation to indicate syncopated hits that the songwriter wants all of the band to play together. Many guitar players and electric bass players learn songs and note tunes using tablature, which is a graphic representation of which frets and strings the performer should play. Tab is widely used by rock music and heavy metal guitarists. Singers in many popular music styles learn a song using only a lyrics sheet, learning the melody by ear from the recording. Purpose and use. Sheet music can be used as a record of, a guide to, or a means to perform a song, a piece of music. Sheet music enables instrumental performers who are able to read music notation and/or singers to perform a song, a piece. In classical music, authoritative musical information about a piece can be gained by studying the written sketches and early versions of compositions that the composer might have retained, as well as the final autograph score and personal markings on proofs and printed scores. Comprehending sheet music requires a special form of literacy, the ability to read music notation. An ability to read or write music is not a requirement to compose music. There have been a number of composers and songwriters who have been capable of producing music without the capacity themselves to read or write in musical notation, as long as an amanuensis of some sort is available to write down the melodies they think of. Examples include the blind 18th-century composer John Stanley and the 20th-century songwriters Lionel Bart, Irving Berlin and Paul McCartney. As well, in traditional music styles such as the blues and folk music, there are many prolific songwriters who could not read music, and instead played and sang music by ear. The skill of sight reading is the ability of a musician to perform an unfamiliar work of music upon viewing the sheet music for the first time. Sight reading ability is expected of professional musicians and serious amateurs who play classical music, jazz and related forms. An even more refined skill is the ability to look at a new piece of music and hear most or all of the sounds in one's head without having to play the piece or hear it played or sung. Skilled composers and conductors have this ability, with Beethoven being a noted historical example. Classical musicians playing orchestral works, chamber music, Sonatas and singing choral works ordinarily have the sheet music in front of them on a music stand when performing, with the exception of solo instrumental performances of solo pieces or concertos or solo vocal pieces, where memorization is expected. In jazz, which is mostly improvised, sheet music, called a lead sheet in this context, is used to give basic indications of melodies, chord changes, and arrangements. Even when a jazz band has a lead sheet, chord chart, or arranged music, many elements of a performance are improvised. Handwritten or printed music is less important in other traditions of musical practice, however, such as traditional music and folk music, in which singers and instrumentalists typically learn songs by ear or from having a song or tune taught to them by another person. Although much popular music is published in notation of some sort, it is quite common for people to learn a song by ear. This is also the case in most forms of Western folk music, where songs and dances are passed down by oral and oral tradition. Music of other cultures, both folk and classical, is often transmitted orally, though some non-Western cultures developed their own forms of musical notation and sheet music as well. Although sheet music is often thought of as being a platform for new music and an aid to composition, it can also serve as a visual record of music that already exists. Scholars and others have made transcriptions to render Western and non-Western music in readable form for study, analysis and recreative performance. This has been done not only with folk traditional music, but also with sound recordings of improvisations by musicians and performances that may only partially be based on notation. An exhaustive example of the latter in recent times is the collection The Beatles' Complete Scores, which seeks to transcribe into staves and tablature all the songs as recorded by the Beatles in instrumental and vocal detail types. Modern sheet music may come in different formats. If a piece is composed for just one instrument or voice, the whole work may be written or printed as one piece of sheet music. If an instrumental piece is intended to be performed by more than one person, each performer will usually have a separate piece of sheet music, called a part, to play from. This is especially the case in the publication of works requiring more than 4 performers, though invariably a full score is published as well. The sung parts in a vocal work are not usually issued separately today, although this was historically the case, especially before music printing made sheet music widely available. Sheet music can be issued as individual pieces or works, in collections, as pieces performed by a given artist, etc. When the separate instrumental and vocal parts of a musical work are printed together, the resulting sheet music is called the score. Conventionally, a score consists of musical notation with each instrumental or vocal part in vertical alignment. The term score has also been used to refer to sheet music written for only one performer. The distinction between score and part applies when there is more than one part needed for performance. Scores come in various formats: full scores, variants and condensations. A full score is a large book showing the music of all instruments and/or voices in a composition lined up in a fixed order. It is large enough for a conductor to be able to read while directing orchestra or opera rehearsals and performances. In addition to the practical use for conductors leading ensembles, full scores are also used by musicologists, music theorists, composers and music students who are studying a given work. A miniature score is like a full score but much reduced in size. It is too small for use in a performance by a conductor, but handy for studying a piece of music, whether it be for a large ensemble or a solo performer. A miniature score may contain some introductory remarks. A study score is sometimes the same size as, and often indistinguishable from, a miniature score, except in name. Some study scores are octavo size and thus somewhere between full and miniature score sizes. A study score, especially when part of an anthology for academic study, may include extra comments about the music and markings for learning purposes. A piano score is a more or less literal transcription for piano of a piece intended for many performing parts, especially orchestral works. This can include purely instrumental sections within large vocal works. Such arrangements are made for either piano solo or piano duet. Extra small staves are sometimes added at certain points in piano scores for two hands to make the presentation more complete, though it is usually impractical or impossible to include them while playing. As with vocal score, it takes considerable skill to reduce an orchestral score to such smaller forms because the reduction needs to be not only playable on the keyboard, but also thorough enough in its presentation of the intended harmonies, textures, figurations, etc. Sometimes markings are included to show which instruments are playing at given points, while piano scores are usually not meant for performance outside of study and pleasure. Ballets get the most practical benefit from piano scores because with one or two pianists they allow the ballet to do many rehearsals at a much lower cost, before an orchestra has to be hired for the final rehearsals. Piano scores can also be used to train beginning conductors, who can conduct a pianist playing the piano reduction of a symphony. This is much less costly than conducting a full orchestra. Piano scores of operas do not include separate staves from the vocal parts, but they may add the sung text and stage directions above the music. Vocal scores. A vocal score is a reduction of the full score of a vocal work to show the vocal parts on the staves and the orchestral parts in a piano reduction underneath the vocal parts. The purely orchestral sections of the score are also reduced for piano. If a portion of the work is a cappella, a piano reduction of the vocal parts is often added to aid in rehearsal. Piano vocal scores serve as a convenient way for vocal soloists and choristers to learn the music and rehearse separately from the orchestra. The vocal score of a musical typically does not include the spoken dialogue, except for cues. Piano vocal scores are used to provide piano accompaniment for the performance of operas, musicals and oratorios by amateur groups and some small-scale professional groups. This may be done by a single piano player or by two piano players. With some 2000s-era musicals, keyboardists may play synthesizers instead of piano. The related but less common choral score contains the choral parts with no accompaniment. The comparable organ score exists as well, usually in association with church music for voices and orchestra, such as arrangements of Handel's Messiah. It is like the piano vocal score in that it includes staves from the vocal parts and reduces the orchestral parts to be performed by one person. Unlike the vocal score, the organ score is sometimes intended by the arranger to substitute for the orchestra in performance if necessary. A collection of songs from a given musical is usually printed under the label vocal selections. This is different from the vocal score from the same show in that it does not present the complete music, and the piano accompaniment is usually simplified and includes the melody line. Other types. A short score is a reduction of a work for many instruments to just a few staves, rather than composing directly in full score. Many composers work out some type of short score while they are composing and later expand the complete orchestration. Short scores are often not published. They may be more common for some performance venues than in others. An open score is a score of a polyphonic piece showing each voice on a separate star. In Renaissance or Baroque keyboard pieces, open scores of 4 staves were sometimes used instead of the more modern convention of of one staff per hand. It is also sometimes synonymous with full score. Scores from the Baroque period are very often in the form of a bass line in the bass clef, and the melodies played by instrument are sung on an upper stave in the treble clef. The bass line typically had figures written above the bass notes indicating which intervals above the bass should be played, an approach called figured bass. The figures indicate which intervals the harpsichordist, pipe organist or lute player should play above each bass note. Popular music. A lead sheet specifies only the melody, lyrics and harmony, using one staff with chord symbols placed above and lyrics below. It is commonly used in popular music and in jazz to capture the essential elements of song without specifying the details of how the song should be arranged or performed. A chord chart or chart contains little or no melodic information at all but provides detailed harmonic information. Some chord charts also indicate the rhythm that should be played, particularly if there is a syncopated series of hits that the arranger wants all of the rhythm section to perform. Otherwise, chord charts either leave the rhythm blank or indicate slashes for each beat. This is the most common kind of written music used by professional session musicians playing jazz or other forms of popular music, and is intended for the rhythm section to improvise their accompaniment and for any improvising soloists to use as a reference point for their extemporized lines. A fake book is a collection of jazz songs and tunes with just the basic elements of the music provided. There are two types of fake books: collections of lead sheets, which include the melody, chords, and lyrics, and collections of songs and tunes with only the chords. Fake books that contain only the chords are used by rhythm section performers to help guide their improvisation of accompaniment parts for the song. Fake books with only the chords can also be used by lead instruments as a guide to their improvised solo performances. Since the melody is not included in chord-only fake books, lead instrument players are expected to know the melody. A tablature is a special type of musical score, most typically for a solo instrument, which shows where to play the pitches on the given instrument rather than which pitches to produce, with rhythm indicated as well. Tablature. A tab is widely used in the 2000s for guitar and electric bass songs and pieces in popular music genres such as rock music and heavy metal music. This type of notation was first used in the late Middle Ages, and it has been used for keyboard and for fretted string instruments.